Hey YouTube, I am Tiberius and you're about to watch an edited recording of a Twitch stream. You can check out my Twitch using the link in the video description. If you enjoy the content, please consider giving it a like and subscribing to my channel. Thank you and enjoy the video. Alright, let's start off. We're going to do trapped source. This was the easy one. This one did not have source code. The source code will be listed here. It'll be a download. Okay, so basically, by the way, so the CTF is over, but for like 3 days after, they have this follow-up CTF, which is basically, it's the same challenges, but they don't score anything. Right? It's really nice because it means that anyone who didn't get any of the challenges during the CTF can go revisit.
New subscription received. Dispensing gratitude.
Jackson,
Gratitude
thank you for the tier 1 sub. 3 months in advance as well. Appreciate it, my friend. We also have a hype train. Nice. Okay, so this one was rated very easy. We're gonna go through them in order. We're gonna do TrapTrack before UnEarthly Shop. UnEarthly Shop was the insane level one. All right, so you had basically no source code, so we can just. Oh my goodness.
Dispensing gratitude. Gratitude dispensed.
Barry Duina resubscribed for 14 months.
Free
Thank
IE.
you so much. Happy free IE, yes. Okay. So we basically don't have source code. We have to look at whatever we have here. So obviously the first thing we do is we view the page source. And immediately we see, hey, look, a correct pin. 8291 is there. So 8291. And there we go, we got the flag. Yay! View source can be useful. Right? So we can even go into the thing here, and it basically just you post the pin, it gives you the flag. Alright? Again.
0W0.
Thank you, Oreo, by the Prime sub. Very easy. This was the easiest one. Okay. I don't think there are any questions about that one. Let's go through to some of the more fun stuff. All right, Gunhead. So this one did have downloaded files. And I do not have them loaded, apparently. Okay, so we have the Gunhead code. So the first thing, like I said, download the code and obviously try and find the flag. So the flag, I believe, is in Docker file. Yeah. The Docker file tells us, hey, the flag.txt is going to be copied into the root directory. Okay, so that's useful. We know where the flag is. And now if we basically look around, by the way, so I'm going to be speeding through these because we have 9 to do, and we don't have that, we have like 3-4 hours. So basically, I've written down how I solved these, but just bear in mind, I didn't solve them as quickly as I'm going to right now. I'm basically going to walk you through them. Some of these took hours to solve. Some of them took, I believe the first 4 that I solved, I did within the same hour. So the first Web Gunhead, Drobots, Passman, and Orbital, I believe I solved like within an hour, the same hour. So they're not too difficult. But later on, we'll get to the ridiculous ones. Okay, so if we go into the challenge, we look at index.php, and it shows that there is a route. Remember I told you, find the routes. So in modern web apps, I tell people on this on my streams regularly, in modern web apps, you don't have things like browsing to, I don't know, member.php, right? Yeah, or profile.php or admin.php. All right, gone are the days when you could just look up the file, right? So profile.php would match a file on the server called profile.php. All right, those days are over, mostly. And now we have a routes. So you have the index.php file, right? And that defines routes. And basically, if I tried to browse to a file directly, it wouldn't work. I can only do what these things say. If I try and send a GET request to the root / basically, it will use the recon controller specifically the index function. Okay, I can also post to /API/ping. All right, and that will use the recon controller with the ping function. Now, there isn't a /API directory. Okay, there isn't even a ping file. All right, none of these are actual files. They are basically fake. So this is how modern web applications work. They define a bunch of routes which don't exist as files or directories on the server, and then they handle them. And they basically fire off requests to certain controllers. Okay, so we have reached level 5 hype train. You guys are insane. Thank you so much. Okay, so we see that, yeah, if we go to the recon controller here, there's two functions. The index function, which is just going to show us the index view. And then we have the ping function. All right, so if we read through this ping function, we see it takes the file contents of PHP input. Now, those of you who've watched my stream before know that the PHP input is basically just the request body. Okay? So it's going to get the file contents of the request body, the raw request body. It's going to throw it into JSON decode. So presumably, the request body is supposed to be a JSON object, right? So it's going to put it into a JSON decode, which is basically going to create an actual JSON object in PHP. Okay. It's going to check whether the JSON object is empty, which it probably shouldn't be. If it's not empty, it's going to make sure that there is an IP JSON key in there. Otherwise, if either of those things are not true, it's going to return an error message. Otherwise, it's going to pass that IP key value to a recon model. Okay, so let's look at the models. We've got a recon model here. The recon model takes an IP address, which we already knew, right? It's there. So it takes an IP, assigns it to a class variable, instance variable, and then we have this get output, which returns shell exec and the string ping-c3 concatenated with whatever the IP address was. Okay, fun, right? And obviously they require this. Do I need to sanitize user input before passing it to shell_exe? Who thinks you should? Possibly, right? So the other thing it does is it runs the get output afterwards and assigns it to a variable called output. And then it basically just spits back that as a JSON object. So let's actually load the application because we probably know what we need to do here, right? Okay, we're going to load this. All right. So we have this web interface, whatever. If we go over here, we can see we have commands. Enter /help. All right, and we have this ping command. So if we do ping 127.0.0.1, okay, and we have a look at what that did. So indeed, that did post to /API/ping, and it did the JSON exactly how I described, right? It's a JSON object with an IP key, and then it passes this space 127.0.0.1. But you might notice something weird about the output. The output only outputs the first line of the response, of the output, I guess. I'm not entirely sure why this happens, but that's something interesting to note. Because that basically means we can't do something... Actually, you know what? Let's do it in repeater because we're pros. We can't just do a semicolon followed by ID. Okay, we can. What? This wasn't working yesterday. Did they fix it? Never mind, you can do that. Alright, screw it. This literally wasn't working yesterday. I had to basically make an invalid thing. Anyway, let's assume that my notes are correct. Literally yesterday, it wasn't returning. It would just return the first line. They may have fixed it. Stop it. Stop it, chat. So, how would you fix this? Well, you can fix this easily. You can do something like invalid, and then do an OR. And then you just get that. Worked on my computer. Yeah, you could probably even do that, to be honest. The way it basically was working yesterday, when I was writing all this up, was it would only output the first line. But specifically, it would only output the first line of the standard output. So if you could trigger an error, right, then it's not going to output the error message. But instead, it'll do this. The other way of doing it, obviously, is to use some kind of like ID like that. Okay, I guess not. That was technically working for me the other day as well, but oh well. They've changed this box. Oh, maybe it's that. No, okay, never mind. Anyway, we have that, so we can just do something like cat flag.txt, right? There it is. Boom. All good. Any questions? Yeah, I mean, you could do it through the browser, but I feel like we should all be using Burp Suite. Again, this was a very easy, so it shouldn't be too difficult. Very straightforward, exactly. All right. Moving on to Drobots. Okay, web Drobots. We download the files again, remember? There's a download link here. Okay, so the Docker file shows that the flag, again, exists in the root directory. Yeah, it's classic ping command injection. But again, very easy. Okay, so we have a flag. Let's have a look around more. So we have entry.sh. There's a few files you should always check. Build Docker is the build Docker script. Docker file is the Docker file. Entry point is interesting, so this will run and do extra stuff. So we can see in entry point, it is going to generate, so it has an admin user, right, in the users table, and it passes it genpass as the password, which happens to be this random MD5 hash. Okay. So yeah, it'll basically generate a random admin password. Okay, so that's interesting. You might not need the admin password, by the way, but sometimes you do. So let's have a look at the challenge. If we go into application, blueprints, and routes, remember I talk about this routes.php, or routes file, I should say. So this is where all the routes are defined. Now in Flask, which is Python, you have this thing called blueprints. Now blueprints are weird, but effectively they're a way of kind of separating out routes a little easier. So basically, any blueprint that has web in it, right? So if you have a web blueprint, basically that means that the first, you have to go to /web and then whatever the blueprint says. The other one is /API. So we'll note that the first thing this does, though, is it opens the flag.txt and reads it and sets it to a variable called flag. Okay? The web route is /. So that just renders the login. It has a logout, it has a home. The home renders the home.html, passes the flag as a variable. That's interesting. Let's look at the home template and see where that flag variable is used. It's used here. Okay, so presumably we need to get to this. We need to log in. All right, because as you can see, this needs authentication. All right. So there's an API route login, which is a post request, and it basically takes a JSON object, it extracts a username and password, does some checks on those, and then it calls this login function. Okay, so let's try and find where this login function is. The great thing about this is you can just search for it in this file. And there we go, import login. Application.database import login, which means we go to application folder, database, there's login. And again, this is very easy, so you have a very easy comment here. We should update our code base and use techniques like parameterization to avoid SQL injection. Okay, So we have a select password from users where username equals username and password equals password. All right. Ridiculously simple SQL injection. Yeah. So we know the username is admin. We don't know the password. So what do we do, chat? What do we do? We do all 1 equals 1, right? No, we don't do that. We don't ever do that. Also, notice that the SQL statement uses double quotes around parameters rather than single quotes. So that's something you need to be aware of. So we're going to use a double quote, and then we're just going to go dash, 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 and then this can be whatever we want. And we're logged in. Okay? Because if I go to here, paste this in. So what we did was we typed admin quote dash dash dash. Okay? And then whatever this was, this could be anything. Oh, where am I doing? Okay. So all that did, it just selected the password from users where the username equals admin and just ignored everything after it. And you don't need to have or. This is just much easier. Okay, so we got the flag. Any questions about that one? Very easy SQL injection. Okay? You could do or if you really wanted to, but you don't need to. Cool. Okay. That was Drobots. Now it's Passman. Is there a case where only or works? I haven't come across one. I discovered the other... I say I discovered. I didn't really discover it. But the other day, and I shared this on Web App Wednesday, I used to think that you could... or would only be useful if you didn't have a valid value. But there is, in fact, a way of doing an injection where you don't have a valid value, but you can guess the column. So in this case, imagine we didn't know that there was an admin user, right? So you have a normal admin user where an admin logs in with their password, the known username SQLI where you know the username, and then you can just do the same trick I just did there, right? But then you have an unknown username, so you don't know the admin, you don't know any users. Well, you could technically use a concatenation, so you would end the... You break out of the string here, then use whatever concatenation function. So in this case, this is MySQL, so we use a plus. And then you just type username. Username being the column. Okay, and then you just shove a limit 1 on the end. And what that does is it says, hey, select everything from users where the username, right, equals an empty string concatenated with the username. And this refers to the column. So this is going to basically match every single row. Yeah. But without causing it like an or 1 equals 1 kind of thing. Or ID equals 0, or ID equals 1 often works too. Yeah, but that's an or. Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah, no, good point. Yeah, that would work, but you'd have to guess the ID as well. So this I think is kind of a nice, neat way of doing it. But yeah, guessing the ID is a good way as well. Okay, so Passman. Let's download Passman. Quit that. Here we go. Okay, get to my notes. All right, so we get an entry point. Entry point shows us that, right, the flag. Okay, so Passman is basically a password manager. And the flag is here. So the flag is in the password manager. It's under the admin account saved passwords, right? It is not the password for the admin account, for example. Okay? But it is saved within the admin's saved passwords.
Thank you for following.
Okay? And then it also shows us that for the actual users logging in, right? There are 4 users, including the admin. They all have this gen pass. And gen pass, again, just uses a random MD5 string. Okay? So, presumably what we have to do is try and figure out how to get into the admin account, right? Okay, so let's have a look at the actual files. If we look up the index.js, not that one, sorry, the routes. The routes index. We see we have a few routes. We have just a / get request, which goes to the login. The get / register goes to register. That's useful. It means we can register stuff. There is a router.use / GraphQL. Okay. So that's interesting. It means that basically if you go to / GraphQL, it's going to use, I believe, the GraphQL schema. Okay. And then we have get / dashboard and / logout. So it looks like, yeah, most of this is using GraphQL. So if we go into the middleware, I think it is. No, not middleware. Helpers. There is a GraphQL helper, which defines basically a few mutations. Down here. You can think of mutations in GraphQL. By the way, GraphQL is this awful, horrible, quote-unquote database query thing invented by Facebook. It makes really no sense. It's really awful. But you can define these mutations, which you can kind of think as functions. So you have a register user function, right, which takes an email, username, and password, and then does this. It has a login user function. It has an update password function. It has an add phrase, which is like, just saved to the database, etc. Okay. If we go to JWT helper, so this is interesting, right? They're using JWTs presumably to authenticate. But if we look over this code, this is fine. Okay. It signs data using a secret, using the HS256 algorithm. It verifies using the same secret using the HS256 algorithm. Okay, the secret itself is a random 69 bytes converted to hex. Okay, so this one was actually quite subtle, but let's actually check it out. So we're going to go here. So we don't know any of the username or password combinations, but we can create an account. So let's create an account. Tiberius. Password. Okay. Tiberius password. We'll log in. We have logged in successfully. Lovely. So we can add stuff if we want. But we don't need to log. Okay. So let's have another look at this GraphQL thing. Actually, let's have a look at the request it sent. So this was the login. Where was the registration? Here. Okay. So we had this registration. Register user takes the email, username, and password. Blah, blah, blah. We have the login, which takes the username and password, etc. I forget what this one was. Oh, let's just get phrase list. All right. So let's have another look at these. So register user, email, username, password, and it uses DB register user. So let's open up the database where all these are probably going to be found. I'm just going to double click that to make sure it opens. Okay. All right. Register user just inserts into user's email, username, password, using parameterized queries. That's okay. All right, let's move on. Login user. Takes username and password, does db login user, which again uses parameterized queries. Okay, that all looks fine. Update password takes the username and password, and then it does db update password using an username and password. All right. So update password. So update user set password to this, where username equals this. Again, using parameterized queries. Okay. There is a vulnerability here. Can anyone spot it? Anyone who didn't solve it last time, can anyone spot the vulnerability here? Like I said, it was very subtle. And it might be useful if you actually compare it to this add phrase. So, both these functions have this line here, which says, hey, if the request user does not exist, basically if there's no session, reject it, authentication required, which is fine. When you add a phrase, to add a phrase, you need to use the username of the session and then whatever arguments were passed, right? So in this case, it says, hey, use the request user's username, right? The username of the session to add whatever phrase here. In update password, it uses request user to figure out if there's a session, but then to get the username, it uses the username from the arguments, which you control. So you can reset anyone's password in this. And the easiest way to do this is actually to take a login request. So if we just send this to repeater here. Okay, because the login request uses the username and password string. So you already have the format. This format is absolutely fine. This is all we need. All we need to do is replace the login user mutation name with that. And I believe the only thing it gives us back... I don't think it gives us anything back, but I think that's all we need to do. I don't think this actually matters. Anyway, if we just type admin here, update password, authentication required. Okay, because I logged in, but I didn't set my session cookie. So I need to copy the session cookie from one of the authenticated responses. There we go. Password updated successfully. Yeah, the CTF's over. After the CTF, they do this after party thing. So for 3 days, they have the you can do the challenges still, but they don't count towards the CTF at all. Okay. So we logged out, admin password, log back in again, and if we click this, there's the flag. Easy. Anyone not understand that one? Again, that was a subtle one. Okay, but whenever you see an update password functionality in a web application, you should always check if you can update other users' passwords. And in this case, there is no reason why an update password mutation should ever take a username. In fact, there's no reason why any update password for any web app should ever take a username. It should know the username because you should be authenticated already. Right? If you can get the username or UID of a user without asking the user, you should always do that as like a general rule of web apps. Okay, so that was all the very easy. So we'll do a quick giveaway. There's no change password on the front. Yeah, exactly. There's no button to change the password. This is where you have to read these. You have to read the source code. These type of CTFs, the Hack the Box ones specifically, are very source code heavy. You have to read the source. Some of them are easy to do without the source, but most of them are not. You're just going to delay stuff, really. All right, so Orbital. Oh, by the way, yeah, Passman was an easy. Orbital, another easy. Okay, so.
It was rigged. I don't give a shit about your opinion. Get fucked.
Nice. So, I solved Orbital, again, Orbital was one of the ones I solved in the same hour. I solved these 5 within like an hour and 10 or something. Orbital, I solved. So when I solve things, I don't generally read the flag. I don't really care what the flag says. I copy it, I paste it, I move on. When I was doing these yesterday to write up the methods and then, you know, so I could show you guys, I realized what the flag said something about the way you were supposed to.
Streamer.
What, Elliot? The flag said something about the way you were supposed to solve this box, and I realized I completely cheesed it. So anyway, let's have a look. Okay, Orbital. Docker file shows that the flag has been copied. Now this was kind of annoying at first. So this isn't a directory. This is a file name, which threw me for like 2 minutes. So it copies the flag.txt into a file called /signal_sleuth_firmware. All right. So that's where the file is. Entry point shows us that the admin has a generated password. No, I don't really understand why it did this. So this led me to believe, I mean, it didn't lead me to believe actually, but this looks like dummy password should be the admin's password, right? Just MD5 summed. It's not. I don't know why. They usually have a script which replaces dummy password with something. But generally speaking, like, if you see this in a CTF, it won't mean the password is dummy password, basically. It's a bit odd because the last few challenges used the actual random function.
Mr. Streamer.
What, Elliot? Stop abusing the Mr. Streamer. Anyway, you cannot... you can't just log in using dummy password. We don't know the admin password is the point. Okay? Take it easy, Gar. Thank you for stopping by. Thank you for all these subs as well. Okay, so let's go look at the challenge. The database.py is the best file to look in. It has a login function. I don't think it's not possible, which is maybe a big clue, to bypass login because I'm verifying the password later. Okay. Because instantly, right, this looks like it's an SQL injection. Yeah? You're passing the username into an SQL injection. Just checking my new earphones. I mean, check them somewhere else. Go to YouTube, man. Alright, so it selects the username and password from the users, whether username equals whatever. Yeah. And then it does a password verify. Using the password it grabbed from the query and the password that you enter. Okay? So even if we do, I mean, if we just enter admin, right, it's going to accept this query and it's going to select the row. The problem is it's going to do a password check later. So I want to see people in chat, how do you think you solve this? Because SQL injection is the correct answer. But how can you get the admin's password using SQL injection here? Was this supposed to be blind SQL? Yeah, pretty much. So this based on the flag, which was something it mentioned, time-based blind. You could do this using a time-based blind. Basically, you send an injection and you sleep whenever the first character of the password matches the guess that you do. And you keep doing that until you get the entire password. I don't know whether the author of this challenge realized there was a massive gaping hole in this, but there was. You don't need to do this. That's the stupid way. Okay? Well, I say not the stupid way. That's the slow way. Let's just say that. Because we're SQL ninjas, we don't have time for time-based SQL injections. So, let's think about this. Let's copy this, right? So if we type this, right, admin, we're going to get the column that comes back, username, password, right? And it's going to be... You can't do it with all 1 equals 1. No, you can't. And this password is unknown. Think about all 1 equals 1. Is it still going to return all of this? The password is checked later. Okay. So this was immediately obvious what I should do here. Alright, because we've done this so many times on stream. How can you create arbitrary rows in a table? Exactly, Gar. Gar got it immediately as well. If you do a union and you do select 1, 2, right? Then what's going to come back is this 1, 2. But you can't have that because you've still got this admin row and it's going to check the first row. All right. It returns 1 row, so it's going to return the first row. All right. So you're stuck a little bit. However, as I have taught many times on the stream, a union, if there's nothing to union on this side, it will just display this. So we just need to type some random damn string here. Okay. And now, when it does this side, when it just selects username and password from users where username equals nothing, right, this crap, it will return nothing. But then it will union it. So now we can control the first row.
Thank you for following.
So, as long as we can do admin here, and then we can generate an MD5 hash that we know the result of, which in this case, the MD5 hash, oh my goodness, for password is this. It's not that, but okay, come on. Copy. There we go. Okay. If the MD5, this is the MD5 hash for the word password. So now what's going to happen is the database is going to return this, right? And as long as we submit the word password as the password, we can just log in. You don't even need this, you can just do that. Okay, so actually, if we just copy everything from this quote to before the last quote, we should get in. And as long as I type the word password here. Boom, done.
New
You were supposed to
subscription
do that with
received.
time-based blind.
Dispensing gratitude. Gratitude dispensed.
Okay. So, a few people did that. Yeah, I don't understand. That was kind of obvious. I guess the guy who wrote this didn't realize that the trick where if you put nothing this side, it will still give you stuff. I didn't even think of a time-based blind. As soon as I saw this, I knew exactly what I needed to do. I was like, that you can just union that, surely. And yes, you can. Okay, so that was the first bit. So now let's have a look at the blueprints routes. So we've already logged in. There's this export feature. All right. So you send a post request to the export. It will grab the it has a JSON. It'll grab the name, and then it just does send file. I mean, this is kind of obvious as well, right? Also the comment. Everyone is saying I should escape specific characters in the file name. I don't know why. All right, this is just an easy directory traversal. So, in fact, if we do this now, if we just click this export button, we'll get a request we can use. Oh, did I not? Oh, wait, what? Oh, binary content. Hang on, I need to actually enable all of that. There we go. Let's resend this. Okay, so communication.mp3, if you send that, it will get /communications/communication.mp3. Okay, but we know where the flag is, right? The flag is at the signal sleuth firmware thing. So it's up one directory, so we need to go up one directory, and then if we do signal_sleuth if I spell that right. Firmware. We get the flag, boom. And you see, time-based SQL are fun. They are not actually fun. This is a lie. Should be union-based SQLi is fun. All right, any questions about that one? Moving on to Didactic Octo paddles. This is one of the mediums now. Okay, so we have a medium. Let's get rid of this. Okay, the Docker file shows us the...
Thank you for following.
Have I missed any updates? God, thank you for gifting a sub to Smuggling Pickles. Okay, so... the flag is in the root directory at /flag. Okay. And if we look at challenge utils database.js, we can see that, yeah, the admin user has this random password here. So the admin password is generated from here. So require authorization. If we go to authorization, admin password is this random 32.
New subscription received. Dispensing gratitude. Gratitude dispensed.
So random 16 bytes. Thank you, Figure 8, for subscribing. For 6 months in advance. Holy crap, thank you so much. Okay, so the admin password is random. Okay. If we go to index, no, routes index, sorry. We look at the routes. Hang on a minute. All right, so there is a register. So you can register username and password. So that's useful. There is a login. And there is a /admin at some point here. Okay. Let's go back to the login. Once you log in, so if you have a valid password, it's going to create this JWT. Okay? Using the ID, signs it using a token key, and expires in 1 hour. And it's going to set that as the session token. Okay? So, let's have a look at the middleware. There are 2 types of middleware used. So, for regular users, the auth middleware is used. But if you want to visit the admin, which is down here, the admin middleware is used. Okay? But crucially, it's the same login. So if we go to auth middleware, you see that to check, basically the auth middleware checks whether the session is valid. Okay, this is the one that handles the session. So the auth middleware gets the session cookie. If there isn't a session cookie, it redirects to login. Otherwise, it does a verify on the session cookie using the token key. Okay? Perfectly valid. This is absolutely fine. Okay, this is secure. This is how you're supposed to do it. If we look at the admin middleware, that does something slightly different. It does the cookie extraction the same. If there isn't a cookie, it redirects to login. Okay. But now it decodes the session cookie. So it doesn't verify it. It decodes it. And then it checks whether the algorithm used is set to none. And if it's not, it redirects to login. Okay? Otherwise, if it's not set to none, but it's set to HS256, it verifies the session cookie using the token. Okay. If it doesn't equal none and it doesn't equal HS256, it uses this third thing, where it verifies it using the algorithm that you put in, well, that exists in the JWT. Okay. So, can anyone see? We can't use none, and we obviously can't use HS256. So, what else could we use, chat? Yeah, figure 8, exactly. This is case sensitive. The none algorithm is not case sensitive, so this one was also quite easy, to be honest with you. We do this. So we need to register an account. So we need to go to /register. So we're going to create Tiberius, password, register. Tiberius, password. So we need a valid session. Okay. And actually, if I go to /admin here, you're not an admin. Perfect. Okay. So I'm going to send this request to repeater. You're not an admin. All right. So let's have a look at the contents of the token. ID is set to 2. Obviously, the admin's probably going to be ID 1, so we're going to change that. We'll apply the changes. That's all good. And now in here, the algorithm is set to HS256. So we need to set it to, we can just use a capital N, none, like that. Now, crucially, Burp Suite still hasn't understood that sometimes you don't need to add an equal sign here, so we need to take off the encoded equal sign. And because it's a none algorithm, we need to take off the signature as well. So basically everything after the last period, but keep the last period. And now if we send that, oh look, we're an admin. Okay, that's half the challenge done. So let's have a look at this admin page now. So if we go to views, admin, it's using JS render. Okay. And it looks like the only thing it does is list the users. It does for users.split, comma, do all this, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so let's have a look at how the users are passed. So if we go back to index.js, it grabs the list of users from the database. It uses a map to map them all to presumably some kind of array, I think. And then it, for some bizarre reason, it calls jsrender.templates, passes it a template literal, and then renders it. This is not how you're supposed to do templates. They could have just passed this directly to the template itself, but instead, they did not. They decided to call an extra render step, which means this is just a classic SSTI. So if we go to Hacktricks, SSTI, and we go and look at JS render, if we can. It's still loading apparently. There we go. JS render has this lovely one here. Okay. So I already have one that's basically the same thing. So the way you do this is we just need to register another user. Oops. We just need to register another user with a username equal to this template injection string. So if we go back to wherever I registered and we go there, paste this in, and obviously I just need to backslash all the double quotes because it's a JSON object. So let's just backslash this and backslash this. And again, this is just the payload copy from Hacktricks, but instead of doing whatever the cat thing they did, I just cat/flag.txt. And if we send that, user registered successfully. If I refresh this, there's the flag. Any questions about that one? That was the last one I got in that first hour. So, until now, all of them have been relatively simple. SpyBug. Okay, so I need to. This one got slightly more complicated. Okay, so let's go to the routes panel. So this reveals, the panel reveals that, yeah, if you get the panel, right, if you browse to /panel, and your username, your session username is equal to admin, right, then it will set the username variable here in the template to the flag. Otherwise, it will set it to your username. Okay? So in this instance, it's kind of obvious what we need to do. We need to somehow either log in as admin or do something where the admin, we can get to the admin user, right? Because if we log in as the admin, we'll get the flag. Yeah? That's the route to the flag. It's like what you should always do. The first thing you need to do is figure out where the flag is and how you can potentially get the flag, okay? Okay, so we go to the database now, which is in utils database. It shows us that, yeah, the admin user has a random password, okay? So unless we can change the admin password or somehow get the admin's password, we're not going to be able to log in as the admin. Okay? Also, if we evaluate any of this, there's no way to actually create users. So these are users, db user. There's a check user login function, but there's no register user. Okay? However, what there is there is a register agent and a check agent login, update agent details. Okay? So if we go to the agents.js, we can see that we can register an agent by just making a GET request. Okay. We can check an agent using an identifier and a token, apparently. We can update an agent's hostname, platform, and architecture using this. And we can also upload a file, apparently. Okay. So the upload is interesting. This code took me a while to read. I haven't actually used much Node stuff for uploading either. But effectively, all this means is the file, the upload name is called recording. It's then going to create a file path that is basically the uploads directory plus the file name, right? And the file name we have control over, I think. It's then going to read that file, and it's going to check whether this string appears, this regex appears. This regex is pretty simple. It's basically just basic, sorry, not basic, it's hex encoded for the word riff in all caps. Then for bytes that can be anything you want. And then this is all caps wave. Okay. What's the other thing it does? So if that doesn't match, so if there isn't that string somewhere in the file, it's going to delete the file. Okay? Otherwise, it's going to create a recording. If we check out what the multi-upload thing, there we go, here. Basically, the upload processing has a file filter on it, which basically means it's going to check stuff. So in this case, the MIME type of the file has to be audio/wave, and the original file name has to end in .wav. Okay? So honestly, this one, and this is another reason why you should download the code, because we can actually, we can run this code and change a few things. So that's what we're going to do. What we're going to do is we are going to set the admin password manually. So how are we going to do that? Database, I think, right? So we're just going to set the admin password to password here. Okay, if I save that, and then we go in here, I go into this, and then web, what is it, SpyBug? Web SpyBug, and then do build Docker. So the reason we want to do this is I just want to log in as admin, because we have no way of actually getting an admin account. And also there's this admin bot, which looks like it logs in and visits the admin page, right? Basically, I want to double check what the admin is going to see. And you could do this, I guess, manually, but the fact is it uses .pug as a template engine, so I have no idea what's going on with this. Let's just explore this though while we're at it, so we can see what happens when we. So we can't log in, but remember we could do an agent register. Or not, maybe it was a post request. Change request method. No, okay, what was it? Agents. Is it agents register then? Yeah. I think it was a GET request, right? Okay, so we can register an agent, we get an identifier and a token. And so there was another one where we could do check, right? Check, identifier, token. Okay, so let's do check, identifier, and then the token. Okay. We could get a post to details where we submit a hostname, platform, and arch. Okay, so let's do change request method. It's going to be agent details. We're going to have a JSON object. We have hostname, test, platform, test, and arch test, I think it was. We also need to do the content type application JSON. That's okay. Good. Okay, did this finally work? It did. All right, excellent. So we can actually do all that again. So if I log in as admin password, so remember, this is my local machine. All right. So we can see, okay, yeah, the flag is there. That's the fake flag. But it also lists agents and recordings. So let's resend. Send this here. We're going to do the GET request again to agent/register. Now if we refresh, we have an agent here, but they have no hostname platform architecture. Okay, so again, what we're going to do is we're going to do a post request to details, copy all of this. And set this to JSON, and then I'm just going to copy the original. Okay, and we'll send that. Okay, let's refresh it. Test, test, test. Okay, so the first thing obviously you do, even though this is using a template engine, this is using Pug. If we go to panel.pug, we can see it's using, agent hostname, agent platform, agent arcs, but I don't know anything about Pug. So the first thing I did, and this is what I actually did when I was solving it, was I just tried some simple HTML injection. So I just did a very nice common payload with strikeouts. So we're going to send that again. Okay, refresh. And lo and behold, we can get HTML injection. Okay, so that's nice. So can we just do scripts? Let's do scripts, yeah? Script alert 1. Okay, boom, and if we refresh, nothing. Why? Oh, refuse to execute an inline script because it violates the following content security policy. Yes, this, remember from, was it Wednesday we did it? We had content security policies. This has a content security policy. I think it's defined here, yes. The content security policy says, the only scripts that are allowed are those that are self scripts, which basically means scripts that are hosted on the server itself. So if there was a scripts directory and there was in like a jQuery.js, you could load that. That's fine. It will execute this. Frame ancestors none means you can't use iframes. Object source none means you can't use objects. I forget what this does, but whatever. Anyway, you can't do any of that. So the other thing you can't do, even though script source is set here, you can't do things like image on error. That doesn't count either. But you can upload a file. Yes, exactly. And that's where this comes from. So let's try this upload thing, yeah? So I'm going to save this. I'm going to make a new request. Now let's check out the upload again. It was agents. So it was agent/upload, okay. And it was a multi-uploady thing. So we're going to go to upload. Is it upload or uploads? Upload. Oh, we're going to change the body encoding. Actually, just going to do x equals x. Change body encoding. Oh my goodness, hang on. Can you please work this time now? There we go. If you change body encoding enough, eventually you get to the type that is listed there, but I don't think I actually updated the... I hate that about this. Hang on a minute. Okay, what happens if I do it now? There we go. This is what I wanted. So if you hit the change body encoding enough times, you'll eventually get to this multi-part form data, which is useful. Okay, so this is how you upload forms. This is how you upload files using this. Okay, so we need some specific information, right? The name is recording. So this is what this is. Okay. And it's a file, so it has a file name as well. File name equals test dot, it has to end in WAV, remember? Right, up here. It has to end in WAV. Content type have to be this. So we need to put a new line here. Content type that. Okay. And the other thing was it had to have this weird regex, right? So again, you could do basically this is just eight of these random, which is 4 random bytes. All this is hex encoded, and it converts it to hex first. So if you just decode this, what I did was I just did @ symbols. So basically, as long as this string appears somewhere in the file, we should be fine. Let's see if it worked. It did. Okay, so this is the file name that was uploaded. So if we refresh this, and we look at the page source, here it is, uploads, right, 742F, 742F. Okay. And it downloaded it here. Okay. So now it's pretty easy. What we have to do is make this into a JavaScript file. All right, and that's pretty easy. We can just define the variable a equals, and then we quote this, just to make sure it passes that file check. And now we can do an alert. Okay. So we have this file name. And now what we need to do is go back here. And although you can't use script tags like this, you can use script tags with a source. And so as long as we do source equals uploads slash, probably I should do slash uploads. And we need to backslash these quotes because we're in a JSON object. As long as we do that, send. And now if we refresh this page again, we get an alert box. Okay, easy. All right, so the exploit, once you've done all that, once you've figured all that out, the exploit's really simple. We just need to find this flag using the DOM. So we can actually do that. We can inspect the DOM here. It's in an H2. So if we do document.get elements, goodness, what's happening? Elements by tag name. h2, we get an HTML collection with one thing in it. So if we do that again, but we say 0, there's the element. So what we do need is just text content. And there's the flag. Okay. All right. So our payload is actually going to be pretty simple, and we can actually exploit this for real now. So what we're going to do, we're going to use, where is he? Okay, so this is the one running, I think, yeah? So if I'm going to resend this, and instead we're going to use the upload, and I'm going to copy this. I'm basically going to copy all of that. Okay, so this is all good. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to copy my payload that I used. So also we don't want it to alert, but what we do want, sorry, hang on, is to do location.href equals, and I'm going to use collaborator. We're going to copy a collaborator domain. I'm going to put it here. And then all I've done is I've told it when the JavaScript loads, set this variable a to this. This is just to get past the filter. Then redirect the admin user to this URL where I've set flag equal, and then I have basically concatenated it with a base64 encoded thing here. Okay, so this gets the flag, it base64 encodes it, it shoves it onto the end of this URL, and it should send it to my collaborator server. All right, so if I do this and send this to this server, we get the file name. And now what we need to do is just, again, change our host name, or what you could use platform or Arch, to be honest. Source equals slash uploads slash this. And then if we do a backslash and a backslash, not there, that should be good. So we sent that. And then all we have to do is wait for the user to, the admin user to visit. Forget how often they visit. Every 5 seconds, maybe. Oh, it's every minute. Every minute they visit the panel, but hopefully eventually we will get a hit. It's polling automatically, so that should be fine. Just double checking everything looks good here.
Thank you for following.
Yeah, it looks good to me. We just need to wait, basically. There it is. Okay, grab this, and if you look, hang on, let me stretch it out a little bit. There's the flag. Boom, done. All right, TrapTrack. TrapTrack was rated hard, but again, like I've said, the more you do these CTFs, the more you learn stuff. Oh, I need to do the prediction, don't I? There you go. All you winners. So the more you do these, the more you learn stuff. And last year there was a box called Redis Island that stumped a lot of us. So we obviously work on a team with these. Redis Island stumped us. But we eventually got it. I think we got it a weird way, though. Anyway, during our Redis Island research, we stumbled on something that we didn't end up using, but was pretty neat that I didn't realize. And it came into use here, to the point where I was able to almost immediately know how to solve this one. So let's have a look. So the Docker file shows that the flag is in /root, which is interesting. But also there's this read flag binary. Okay. And if you look at the read flag binary code, all it is, it's an SUID file that cats the flag. So basically this challenge is, hey, you need to not only you can't just read files from the system, right? You need to actually run the code, and we're hiding the flag in the root directory just to make it harder. All right. So that was this one. The Docker file also, I think, showed that, or maybe not. No, it does. Okay, Docker file shows that Redis is being used. Okay. So that was interesting. We're going to challenge application config. We can see that there's a few things here. Admin username password is statically set to admin and admin, so that's nice. So if there is an admin login, we instantly know we can log in. The Redis host is on 127.0.0.1, port 6379, that's standard. But there's this Redis jobs and Redis queue things. So Redis is a weird kind of database. Basically, it's, I don't know, how would you describe Redis? I'm going to Google it because I'm probably going to completely bastardize this. Redis. In-memory data structure store. Used as a data. Yeah, so it's an in-memory database. It's weird. But yeah. So these are probably related. So you can set different. You can call them tables. They're kind of technically, I guess, lists. But there's a jobs table and a job queue table being used here. If we go into the blueprints routes, we'll see that there's a web and an API endpoint. You can log in, so we already know we can log in here. And there is an admin interface. We can list tracks, we can add tracks, we can delete tracks. And we can view the status of tracks. Okay, so let's actually have a look at this. So we can log in using admin. Okay. So we can add traps. Do test https example.com, add TrapTrack added, and then basically it's going into a status of waiting. We refresh this, completed, health is green, whatever that means. All right, so if we go back here, let's go to the endpoint to add stuff. So it takes a trap name and URL, which is what we just presented with it. It then creates a job queue. Using that trap name and trap URL, it creates whatever this TrapTrack's object is, and then it adds the track to the session. Hey, bisect, we'll see. This will be on YouTube eventually, but yeah, this was a fun one. So was the next one. Okay, so let's check out the create job queue, and again, you can just do the search. So we see that it's from application cache. So we go to application cache here. We can see that it passes a trap name and a trap URL. It gets a job ID, which it looks like it just increments from whatever the current Redis num jobs is. And then it creates this data JSON object, where it sets the job ID, the trap name, the trap URL, completed in progress health. And then it does a Redis H set, which is, hang on, Redis hset is something. Sets the specified fields to their respective values in the hash stored at key. So it's hset key field value. So in this case, the key is the env Redis jobs, which we know if we go back, if I actually just open this immediately and we go back to routes, no, config, sorry. Redis jobs is just the string jobs. So it's going to set it at the jobs. The key is the job ID. And then it does something interesting. It's going to pickle the data, base 64 it, and that's the value it's going to use. Okay? And then it's also going to push the job ID onto the queue. Unsafe pickle, it should be what you're thinking of. Pickle can be used safely though, so this might be, right now we haven't got an unpickle thing, right, or a pickle.loads. So we need to try and find that. All right, so if we go back to the routes, we scroll down. Okay, so yeah, we have tracks list is going to JSON dump the data. And so I believe is this, yes, if we look at an individual job, it's going to get the job ID, which is going to be, if we search for this function, let's get job ID, is also in the cache, get job ID, it does an hget, using the Redis jobs and job ID, so it's basically going to extract whatever this is, and then it's going to pickle.load the decoded data. Okay. So, the problem though is, if you look at it, we can probably search for wherever JSON, wherever pickle.dump is appears, right? We can actually just do find in folder pickle.dump. We can actually load all of these. So there's one in the cache. Okay, so this dumps this data, which is this. And we only control 2 values here. So that's probably not useful, right? Because if you the way you would exploit a pickle load is you have to pass it a pickled Python class with an RCE code in it, right? You can't do that here. Main.py.py, whatever. In this case, it increments the field, decrements the field, and sets the field. All right, so we can try and look at set field, I guess. See where set field is used. So that sets the field to health. So again, the problem is we don't have control over any of these values. Weird, right? So maybe it's not a pickle thing. I mean, let's see what happens when this what happens to the URL we give it, right? Because clearly something did happen because we got a health thing, right? So let's have a look. I think it's in worker main. Right. So every 10 seconds, run worker. The function is run. That gets a work item. It increments the job in progress. It gets the trap URL out of the job. Oh, and then it makes a request. Okay, so let's have a look. Let's have a look at this request. If I search for this again. From health check. Okay, health check's here. Okay. Request URL. It basically uses PyCurl. It does a curl to the URL with a 5-second timeout, follows locations, and then it just gives you the response. Anyone got any ideas? You would be forgiven if you had no idea how to solve this one. Move on to the next challenge. Yep. Basically, we can curl endpoints. We can curl stuff. But what can we curl to exploit? Can we curl anything to exploit the pickling? Well, ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce you to the most ridiculous feature of Redis. You can interact with Redis using Gopher, the Gopher protocol. You can send entire command strings to Redis using Gopher. So not only do we not need to do any of this messing around with, you know, any of this kind of the stuff we were doing with the adding stuff, right? So JSON encoding, JSON dumps, don't need any of that. We can do that manually. We can generate a Python pickled RCE binary, well, not binary, RCE string. And then we can just add it into the Redis database anywhere we want using this. Cool, right? So let's do it. We can actually kill this. I don't need that anymore. Okay, so let's go into web trap. Okay, so we're going to write rce.py. We're going to import pickle. We're going to import base64. And we're going to import OS. And I'm actually going to spell base64 properly. We're going to create a class RCE. We're going to define the reduce function. Basically, which will get called when something is unpickled. We're going to set a command. Now, we know that curl is on the box, so I mean, you could potentially get a reverse shell here. I didn't. I just used curl. So what I'm going to do another collaborator. We're going to clear all this. Copy to clipboard. I'm going to use HTTPS. Okay. And then I'm going to do flag equals. And then we're going to run the command, because this is all on the command line. We're going to do /read flag. Piped into base64. Okay. So remember, the read flag binary is the SUID that can read the flag. So we're gonna run that, pipe it into base64, and then we're gonna append that base64 string to this flag. Cool. Then we're gonna return os.system with cmd in a tuple. And then we're going to do if name equals underscore main underscore. We're going to do pickled equals pickle.dumps RC tuple. It is called a tuple. Some people call it tuple, some people call it tuple. It's always been taught to me as tuple. Well, that's the way you say it, Al. I've never heard it say that way. Remember, I did get educated in the UK, so it's entirely possible it's just the British pronunciation. It's with a Z. Sometimes it's spelled with a Z. Okay, so this should be fine, I think. Let's save it. Okay, so Python RCE.py. Okay. So this is a pickled object which should, theoretically, when it's unpickled, call curl. Okay. So now we need to just build our exploit string. So where is the post to? API login. Here we go. The track. Here we go. Okay. Go to repeater. So we're going to call this pwned. And then the trap URL. Okay, so I'm just going to paste that there for now. But the trap URL is going to be the Gopher protocol. So right here. So we're going to do Gopher 127001, and the port number is 6379. Okay, so what do we need to do? Well, we need to save this into the database. Specifically, if we go to routes, and we look at the create job queue again thing, so application cache. So we need to use hset. Okay, so that's easy enough. We just do underscore hset. Okay. And then hang on a minute. Redis jobs is the database, so I believe that's just going to be jobs. So you can pretty much just do a space. We can do a %20 to make it easier. Jobs, %20. Then we need, I believe, the job ID. We're going to use 1437 and 20% for a space, and then the base 64 encoded pickle data. Okay, good. So it's just that. And we will just URL encode this bit just to make sure. But I think that should work. TrapTrack added successfully. Okay, but that's just stored it in the database. Now we need to actually call it. So what we need to do is, if I go back here, so if I refresh this, for instance, it's there, it's completed, its health is whatever. So basically that did complete. If we go to this, here we go. So we can now just put 1337 here. Job does not exist, but I believe it did trigger, and for some reason it's disappeared. There's the flag. Boom. I'm probably taking it up on it. There we go. And again, the only reason that was easy, quote unquote easy for me, is because literally last year we stumbled upon Gopher for Redis. And yeah, I just literally, as soon as I saw that we could send curl requests, I was like, oh, okay, we can just add stuff into Redis then, right? And lo and behold, we could. All right. Let's do the one that must have just killed people. Because if you thought, okay, so that was hard. And to be honest, if you didn't know about the Redis trick, yeah, this one would be hard. But hang on a minute. If I got 2 seconds. Yeah, if you thought this one was hard, and it is kind of, this one is insane. This one is going to frighten people. All right? Please don't leave. We're going to get through this. I have to give a major shout out, and I will do it now. I'm going to post his. I post his. What's it called? It's the Twitter alternative that I kind of use, but I don't use. Anyway, @Fuzz on InfoSec Exchange was super helpful. Mastodon, that was it. I'm not sure if he is in chat. He said he might stop by, but anyway, he got this, and I honestly, yeah, I tried it. I got, I think, 90% of the way there. I kind of understood the the final... I understood the final bit, but I didn't understand how to put everything together. And luckily he did, and so he basically taught me how to do it. And I kind of I understand it a bit better now, and I came up with a nice, neat way of exploiting it. I'd actually stumbled across a PDF, which I'll share as well, when I was trying to solve it the other night, which basically almost did most of the work. And Sarsek apparently worked on it as well. Cool. So, this one has multiple stages. The first bit is fun. The second bit is a nightmare. But we're going to get through it together. Okay, let's look at my notes, which is... My notes for this one take up almost the entire rest, like the same amount of space as the other notes combined. So... Okay, here we go. Let's open the challenge, Unearthly Shop. Okay. So, the Docker file. Again, it copies flag.txt to root/flag and creates an SUID read flag that reads the flag. So immediately we know command execution, probably what we want here. Okay. If we go to entry point, we see that the admin password is random. Okay. So whatever that means, that could mean we have to guess the admin. I mean, that means we have to brute force it, or we have to find some way of changing it or guessing it. It might be that they just want the admin account secured, like you're not supposed to use the admin account, right? But it's just good to know. Okay. There is, in the config files, Nginx. Nginx is a web server. This is useful to know because effectively, if you look in the challenge, there's a back end and a front end. The only difference, the root of the web server, so basically when you go to /, so example.com /, it loads everything out of the front end. Okay? But when you go to /admin, it loads everything out of the back end. So we have two different sites, effectively. And one of them depends on, basically, if you load it from /, and one of them if you come in from /admin. Okay, that's just useful to know. Let's look at the front end first. We're probably, given that the back end is probably the admin stuff, well, it is, right? We should probably focus on the front end first. There's probably a vulnerability that you need to use in the front end that you then try and use somewhere at the back end, okay? Might not be that way, but the way these CTFs generally work is, yeah, you try and escalate your privilege all the way up. Okay? So, nice one out. So if we go to the front end and index.php, all right, this is basically, it's connecting the database. It has this function. You don't have to worry about this right now. But all this is basically doing, this is using Composer, which is a PHP thing to make web apps using lots of different libraries. This basically just is a way of loading different classes from different libraries. Okay. The key thing here is we have a router. So there's 3 routes. We get /, we get the shop controller index function. If we post API products, we get shop controller products. Post API order, we get shop controller order.
Thank you for following.
Okay, so there's basically only one controller here. And that will be in here. So if we go to shop controller, we see the index function just displays the index view. The products, interestingly, takes the contents of the body of the post request and basically parses it as a JSON. And if it's present, it then calls this product get products with whatever that is. Okay? A very similar thing with the order. But let's have a look at this product get products. So this is going to be a model. So if we go into the model here and we go to product model, get products is here. It's going to call this database query. So it's going to call the query function from the database with a static string products, but it's going to pass that JSON that we created, okay? So again, if we look at the database, and we go down to query, it does take two things. The first is a collection. The second is that query that we had, right? So this is using NoSQL. Okay, it's specifically using MongoDB. So MongoDB is a database that does not use SQL, hence the NoSQL. So instead of tables, you have collections, right? And instead of rows, you have documents, basically. So it's kind of odd, but yeah, MongoDB is the most popular. Basically, what you're doing here, we get the collection. So the table is what was the table actually? Let's go back to product model. The table was products, right? The collection was products. So we're going to get the collection, the products collection, and then we're going to call the aggregate function on our JSON. And then it's going to do some stuff, fetch some stuff from the database, and return that. So let's actually look what that did. So we'll load this one. Okay, if we go to proxy, there's the post API, so it automatically calls that. Let's send that to repeater and make the request again. So, okay, here's our JSON object. So it passed this weird sort of array with an actual JSON object with this match thing. Basically, it matches where in stock is equal to true. So if you see here, match in stock equal to true. We could change this to image, and we could change the image to the string relic_2.png, and this should also work. Send that again. There we go. The only thing that comes back is the document where image matches relic_2. Okay. So I'll admit this one took freaking hours for me to figure out, just this first part. I scoured the source code. I even looked at the backend, but the backend had some stuff. We'll go over it shortly, but I figured it has to be the front end first. And the only thing I could think of was there's nothing I can see that helps me unless I'm an admin. Okay, again, forget the back end, but I saw something in the back end which meant, okay, I need to become an admin. But how do I become an admin? There was nothing in here that was linked to the admin. None of the front end stuff even touched the users table. And I was thinking about this for a while, and when you think about these things, you just have to just Google. And I don't use NoSQL, so I figured, hey, I wonder if you can join tables like the same way you can join tables in MySQL. I wonder if you can do that in NoSQL. And so I basically searched, can you join collections? Yes, you can. But very specifically, you can do it. You zoom in. You can do it in the aggregation stage. Ooh. Why is that important? That's important because the query uses the aggregate function. So this is immediately like an aha moment. And it even tells you how to do it. Let's accept all cookies. So you have a collection called books. You have a second collection called book selling data. To aggregate them, you need to use the lookup. You give it a from, which has the whatever table, the first one, right? Sorry, the second one, because obviously you're calling aggregate against books. And in this case, we're calling aggregate against products, right? The collection. So the from has to be the second table, which in our case, I believe is users. Local field and foreign field is basically how you do the join. So let's have a look at the code. There's a schema document here. We have users. Users have an ID. And I believe products also have an ID. So we can just use the ID to join. Okay. So we set those to ID. And then as is just literally anything. It's basically an alias for the field. Okay. So again, this one took forever, but it was literally as easy as doing this. We call lookup from users, local field ID, foreign field ID, and as pwned. And there's the admin password right there. Right? Boom. That took me hours. Literally like maybe 4 hours of just wandering around blindly in the dark before we get the admin password. And that's the easy bit of this challenge. So now we can log in. Login was successful. Yay! Okay, so now we can forget about the front end for now, and I'll mention why for now later. Okay. Now we can explore the back end. Please explain it again. Okay, yeah. So the API products basically had this search where you could it took a match. So this is no SQL code. Basically, it's saying, hey, can you just match any document in the product database, not really database, in the products collection where in stock is equal to true. Okay? But if you dived into it, the way it did the query is it used aggregate. And when you Google whether you can sort of merge two collections, it turns out that, yeah, if you're using aggregate, instead of passing it that match, you can just pass it lookup with this specific thing, where you have the collection you want to merge in, the two IDs, so one from the current collection and one from the from collection, where you want to do a join, and then just an alias. And literally that's all you need to do. So we said, hey, can you look up, join the table users, match the IDs, and then say, hey, pwned is the name, which is what appears here. When you wrote ID, well, I mean, it doesn't, it'll join everything. That's the thing. I think maybe technically I could do underscore ID. Yeah. You don't, this isn't actually, I think you can just put anything potentially here. If you put anything here, you get it joined to every single record. If you put underscore ID, so I probably just cheese that bit, but yeah. If you do underscore ID, you'll only get, if you have the ID record 1 for the product, because that matches the ID for the admin user, it'll be attached to this. If we go down to ID 2 of the product, we don't have anything that matches. Okay? But it turns out if you just put anything here, we'll probably just do test star. It'll just shove everything in there. It is basically a union, yeah. It's actually more of a join than a union, but because you technically have to have these two fields. If you took these fields out, it complains at you, I think. Yeah, internal server error, it'll basically complain. But anyway, we have the admin password. Okay, moving on. So, let me go back to my notes now. If we go to the users model, so the users model is called whenever the user has a session, basically, and we need to create a user object from the session. You might notice something. Unserialize. Basically, the last two challenges were both deserializations. So unserialize the session access. What's the session access? Well, if you notice, when I did this join, the user has an ID, a username, a password, and access. And if you've done any work with PHP before, you will instantly notice this is a serialized PHP object. Okay? Now, serialization in PHP is a little weird Generally speaking, serialization in Python is the easiest to exploit because for some bizarre reason you can just pass it arbitrary classes. No, trust me, this doesn't help. That doesn't help, Al. It really doesn't help. If you thought it was just PHP GCC, you're in for a roller coaster. Okay. So Python is the easiest to exploit because literally you can just like I did just before, right? I created my own code, right? And I pickled this, and the Python on the server was like, yeah, okay, I'll run that. I don't know quite why Python decided that was how it was going to do things, but okay. Python is by far the easiest. The next easiest, I would say, is probably Java. Java has the WISO serial. Java and ASP, maybe. Have WISO serial, which you can generally find a good gadget to use. And Java, again, is very, very simple. You can basically just use the gadget chain and send that as the serialized payload. It'll get deserialized and do lots of fun stuff. PHP, for some bizarre reason, is, of all the main web languages, the hardest to do deserialization with. So, good for PHP, I guess. Okay. So, I'm going to have a drink before I do this. So we have this unserialized, and it unserializes the session access. So the first thing we need to figure out is, hey, can we even change this, right? So let's have a look around. We can get users. There's an update user. Interesting. So this update user takes some data, and it calls database update on the users collection. It extracts the data ID, and it passes data. Okay, so let's have a look at the database, this side of things. So update takes a collection, which in this case was users, an index, and data. So it's going to do an update, and it's just going to set the data. So this is vulnerable to something called mass assignment. All right, because it literally doesn't check what the data you're doing here. So let me show you what I mean. Let's go to the users here. So if I do right, actually I'll do this, yeah. So before we see we have an admin user, they have an ID, a username, password, and an access list, right? So if I change the admin password to just password, update user, that fires off this request. Okay. So it updates the user, and if I now rerun this, we'll see that the admin user password has changed, okay? But what if I do Tiberius, please subscribe? User updated. Oh, look at that. It's created an arbitrary value there. That's in the database now. I could add as many as I wanted. But crucially, I could also just change the access rights. So how these access rights work, I mean, it's pretty obvious, but basically you'll see these are permissions for what I can access as an admin. If there is a B with a 1 after a string, it means I can access that. If there is a B with a 0 after a string, it means I cannot access that. So as you can see, I can currently access the dashboard, the product, the order, and the user. Right? Dashboard, product, orders, user. Let's change. Let's copy this entire string. I'll copy this.
Subscription received. Dispensing
Okay.
gratitude. Gratitude dispensed.
Put it in here. let's say I don't want to access products anymore. So I'm going to change the B after product to a 0. B stands for Boolean, by the way. Send that. If I refresh, it doesn't do anything. But if I log out and log back in again, suddenly the products thing has disappeared. You see? There's just dashboard, order, and users now. Okay? So I can clearly change the access control. All right? Now product is set to 0. Yeah, I know the font is awful. Okay? So we can clearly affect the deserialization, but the problem is, how do we even exploit this? And basically, we can only exploit this deserialization if we can somehow inject a serialized object which calls other classes. It creates objects out of those, and then when those objects are either deserialized or destroyed, call things we can use. All right, it's called a gadget chain. Unfortunately, you have to do this. This is basically a manual gadget chain, which is just awful. So, how do we even start doing this? Well, we need a cd into the directory for Web UnEarthly Shop. All right, now we're in the back end, so we'll start at the back end. Challenge back end. And we're going to do a grep. And we're going to grep for two things. We're going to grep for files that contain __ wake up or __ destruct. Okay? So we're going to search for any files in the back end that contain that. Okay, we've got one. It's the gridfs stream wrapper. And we have tests unified spec. That's it. Okay.
Thank you for following.
Why those methods? So there's a few things you can do with deserialization, but generally speaking, the wake up is called when an object gets deserialized, and the destruct method is called when an object is destroyed. Okay? And generally speaking, obviously, if you're doing deserialization, then something's always going to get deserialized, right? So this wake up will get called if you're deserializing an object. Destruct will get called when the object is no longer needed, which in most instances is the end of the request, right? So when the request, before the response is sent, it's going to destroy all the objects. It doesn't need them anymore. All right? Yeah, they're called magic methods. Python has them. This is why, if I go back to the Python script I used, oops, ls. So we used reduce. Okay. But yeah, if you do anything with PHP, you would use these magic methods. Okay. But crucially, they have to actually be in libraries that we want to use, right? So in this case, there is a destruct call in this. So we'll just Google for it. Destruct, not Google, search for it. What am I talking about? All right. It doesn't have to be wake up or destruct out. There are some others you can use, but yeah, those are the main ones. Trust me, I went down such a rabbit hole searching for other ones in this. Okay, this one is useless. All it does is it sets stream equal to null. That's not something we can exploit. Yeah, you can sometimes use create. You can sometimes use get. Whoops. And toString, yeah, sometimes. Okay, so destruct here. Okay, destruct here does something. It iterates over the map. Sets to entity. If entity value, instance of session, end session. Okay, what does end session do? Oops. Oh, we need session, end session. Okay, hang on. So I think we need to do it back to session, right? Maybe not. I'm not entirely sure where to find this one. Anyway, this one didn't work either. RE4 demo running in the background? What? This one didn't work, so we had basically two things we could use and neither of them worked. Lovely. Okay, so the only other place that there are libraries is the front end. Right? So if we do that grep again, we find a lot more in the front end, which is nice. Oh, okay. While we're loading that, I'm going to paste this into chat because this is amazing. I discovered this when I was actually trying to solve this before I gave up. But I think on page 51 or something. Yeah. Okay, so this is an 84-page PDF and it is genius. It explains how to find these things. It explains how to write proof of concepts, etc. So in this instance, we've basically got to this point. Find useful pop gadgets in library used by application. This is amazing, Al, trust me. So the great thing about this one is literally we can use this. So if we look down here, it uses guzzle HTTP, guzzle source cookie file cookie jar, which is this one. So this example is literally what we can use. And I'll just go through it. Basically, yeah, the destruct function in the file cookie jar calls the save function with a file name that we can set. And this save calls here. And all it does is it iterates over a set of set cookies. And if the cookie has an expiration and its discard is not set to discard, it will add it to an array. And then it will do a file put contents with the file name with a JSON encoded array. Okay. So we can use this to exploit. However, we have some issues in how do we even get it to call this, right? Because the problem is this is all in the front end and we're at the back end. And this is the bit I just gave up on, really, because the class isn't loaded at all, so we can't use it. And the way you do it is just ridiculous, and this makes this an insane level challenge, to be quite honest with you. But basically, if you go to the index function of the backend, remember I talked about this earlier? So this function is what loads files that might be needed by certain controllers or models. Okay? Basically, if it tries to load anything with the word controller, it's going to take the name of whatever was requested and basically prepend the word controllers / to it. Okay? And then at the end, it's going to put a slash and .php. So, effectively, what that means is, hey, when the auth controller is used, the name is going to be auth controller, right? So it's going to prepend controllers / and then prepend a slash and then add .php. So what you get is /controllers /auth controller.php, which is this thing. Okay? Same thing for models. Again, please, if this is going over your head, it's okay. It went over my head for the first 10 times I read this. Then something interesting happens, which is if the name contains an underscore, it replaces the underscore with a /. Okay? So, the other thing is that the way this resolves files, resolves classes, is it'll try and do it local to the backend folder. Okay, because we're in the backend folder. But you can technically load stuff from wherever on the file system, provided that it matches a path. Okay, and we already know these files are, so the backend is in /www/backend, and the front end is in /www/frontend. So, if we are able to load www front end, and gotta get the right thing though, hang on. We don't want to load this from the front end, but we do want to load this vendor auto load. So we need to do front end vendor auto load. In fact, actually, we just need that. We need to somehow make it load this, because when it gets, this, because when it gets this as a name here, right? Let's put it there. It doesn't have the word controller in it. It doesn't have the word model in it. Lovely. But it has some underscores. The underscores are all going to be replaced with slashes. Slash. And then a slash. Good. And then another slash. Okay? It's going to be appended with a /. We don't need a /. And then .php is going to be placed at the end. So this file exists. This file is this file here. Auto load. And what this auto load folder does, what this auto load file does basically is it makes sure you can load all of the files in the vendor directory. Okay? So we need to somehow make that happen. At which point, even though we're in the back end, we can load stuff from the vendors directory on the front end. Okay? Basically, the custom autoloader has an LFI. I don't think it's even custom. I think this is actually how... isn't this how Composer does it? I don't know. Maybe not. Anyway, so yeah. This is weird. So, once we've done that, we can actually make an exploit. And this actually goes through how to create the exploit. So, but I'm gonna create it live. So let's go up to, and then we're just gonna make directory exploit, and I'm gonna cd into exploit. Okay, so we know we need to use Guzzle, right? We're using the Guzzle library. So what we do is we're going to go to the front end, and we're going to look in composer.lock. Composer.json might have it, but it doesn't. Composer.lock does have it, though. And what I mean by have it is it has this string, the required library version. So Guzzle, HTTP Guzzle, as long as it's above 531 or 621, we're good. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a composer.json. We're going to stick this in there, and we're going to make sure it's actually valid JSON object. That's fine. It looks ugly, but whatever. And now what we're going to do is we're going to install Composer. So we just use this lovely curl command. So now we have composer.json and composer.far. And now if we do php composer.far install, I don't have valid. Apparently I don't have valid. Oh, I need another. There we go. Okay, so it's now going to install everything it needs for Guzzle to work. There, done, easy. Okay, now we need to write exploit.php. Okay, all these composer exploits have to at least require the current directory dot vendor autoload.php. This is just to make sure composer works, because if I do an ls, right, now we have a vendor directory. If I look in the vendor directory, we have autoload, we have guzzle http, we have all the ones it needs. Okay, so this is just to make the exploit work, because we need to load that library locally to generate an object for it. Okay, so that's how that does. So remember, there were two things we needed to use this exploit. We need a file cookie jar, but the file cookie jar also needs a set cookie, because the way the file cookie jar save method works, it iterates over a bunch of set cookie objects. So we first need to make sure that those are imported. So we're going to do use guzzle http /cookie/file cookie jar, and we're going to use guzzle http /cookie/set cookie. Okay. All right. So the way we're going to do this is we're going to create an array of objects, which are just going to be loaded one by one. The first object we need is this one. Okay, because once we load this object, it's going to technically load that autoload.php. You might be thinking, how the hell do we make this an object? The answer is surprisingly simple. We create a class frontend vendor autoload. Done. That's it. We're done. That's it. All you need. That is now an object that we can call. And we'll actually create an object. We'll create object equals new _frontend_vendor _autoload. Done. Okay, now we have an object. Okay, now what we need to do is actually create a file cookie jar. So let's go back to the file cookie jar object in the front end. Vendor guzzle http guzzle source cookie file cookie jar. Okay, it has a file name. When we construct it, the store second cookies is equal to false by default. That's okay. So all we need really is to paste it. Is to give it a file name. Okay, and the file is where we're going to save the document. Now, when I was solving this the first time, I did this all offline using the Docker file, and you could save this into the root, which meant you could just save a shell, a web shell, into root, and then just go to it. But apparently, for some reason, the Docker file lets you do that, but you're not supposed to be able to do that. So this made this exploit even harder. So what we need to do is actually put it somewhere else, but somewhere that we know we can write to, basically. And so our object 2, so our second object, is going to be a new file cookie jar, and the location is going to be var temp shell.php. Okay, that's our second object created. But remember how the save function works. It goes over a bunch of set cookie objects, right, that have to have an expiration date, and they make and the discard boolean has to be false. Okay, so we need to create at least one set cookie object. But first we need a payload. Our payload base is going to be the contents of shell.php. And we're just going to create a very simple ecosystem _get. I'm going to change that to single quotes so it doesn't mess with my variable. Get cmd and close it off. Cool. Okay. So now we're going to use object 2 set cookie new set cookie. Okay, and this set cookie, if we go into the set cookie interface, luckily it has a few defaults. Generally speaking, we want a name, we want a value, we want a domain, and we want expires. Okay? Does that make sense? Discard is automatically set to false, which should be okay, I believe. Because... Two seconds. I think it should be okay. I'm going to scroll down and make sure. Yeah, okay. It just needs these 4 things. Cool. Okay, so we're just going to give it a name. Where am I? There we go. Name. We're going to call it foo. We're going to give it a value. Oh, I can't do that. I have to do this stupid syntax because we're in PHP. Bar. We're going to give it a domain, which is going to be the payload. And we're also going to give it an expires, because remember, it has to have an expiration date, which we're just going to call time. Okay? So that should be everything. All right. So we now have a way of loading the autoloader. We now have a file cookie jar, which should call the save function. It should save this string into this file when the file cookie jar object is destroyed, which will be at the end of the request. But we have no way of actually getting this, because this is not browsable. So how do we get this? Well, actually, it's rather easy. It's the same way we do this. So we're going to create a new class called var_temp_shell. And then we're going to set object3 equal to a new var_temp_shell. Okay? So the same reason this loaded this file, right, means we can just load this file as well. Yeah? Hopefully that's understandable. Okay, now we're just going to echo out our serialized object. We're going to JSON encode it, serialize, and we're going to pass the serialize an array, which is going to firstly be object, first going to be object 2, and then, sorry, secondly going to be object 2, and thirdly going to be object 3. Okay. Then hopefully, if I run this exploit, could not open input file. What? What happened? Did my mount just go away? Okay, I think my mount just died. That's okay, I have a backup written over the other side. I wonder if it actually even... Okay, yeah, it just didn't save any of that. Lovely. Okay, I'm just going to copy it from over here. Here's one I wrote earlier. Vim exploit. Lucky I took notes. This is basically the same damn thing. PHP exploit.php. Okay, for some reason it's just... I don't know why that is happening. Okay, let's just... We're going to copy downloads, HTTP, CTF, web unearthly to exploit -r. Okay, never mind. That was one I wrote earlier as well. Let's do that again. Okay. Now we can create this, and hopefully that's going to actually... I don't know why it's not working. There we go. Okay. We're almost there. This is the serialized object. It is an array which basically loads those three things. So you see it loads the autoloader, then it does this massively complicated gadget chain, and then finally it calls var temp shell. So if we copy that and we go back to this, and what we're going to do is we're just going to replace the contents of this access thing here. Okay, I'm going to make sure that's all on one line. Technically that needs to be there. Cool. Okay, so we're going to completely overwrite the access thing with our payload. Send. User updated successfully. I'm going to keep us logged in, but instead we're going to go to an incognito browser. .166.152. Yes, okay, so we're going to go to admin again. And now if we try and log in, it won't work. But look at what happened. Yeah? So hopefully, if this works, if I do a question mark command cmd equals ID, yay! It deserialized the object, loaded that class, and now we can finally do read flag and get the damn flag. Now, if that wasn't the most complicated, hard, that was insane, level challenge, I don't know what is, but anyway, that is how you do that. And again, I have to repeat, I did not do this. I got 90% of the way there. I understood that we had to at least build some kind of gadget chain. I did not find the bit with the autoloader. So I wish I had been able to read this thing. This was kind of useful, but yeah. That is how you solve that one. It was ridiculous. That's one of the definitely one of the hardest challenges on the Hack the Box CTF that I've seen. On the screen are my socials. Please follow me on Twitter, join the Discord server, subscribe to my YouTube channel, and of course follow me on Twitch to get alerted when I go live. You can also find all these links in the video description.